I think this one is kind of for all the people who feel I lost my train of thought right at the beginning of this recording, and I am perfectly fine with that, and we're gonna flow off of that. I walk into a vet building asking to use the bathroom, and I say, may I use the bathroom? And I'm currently at work, and the person that I'm working with is also within the building working on something relating to the building. So I ask, may I use the restroom? And the lady looks at me a bit confused. She's unsure of what I said, and I believe it was for a different reason other than that I wasn't clear enough or wasn't speaking loud enough. I think she said that her hearing wasn't like the best or some other factor. In that moment, I thought about the idea of how no matter what, I think that if people can verbally hear you said something, your question or your statement will be heard at some point. I've had many exchanges where I'm talking to someone and they ask, can you repeat that? Or can you say that again? Or I didn't catch that. Your voice is very soft, or this or that. And I've always wondered why I would feel, well, I know why I would feel like upset or discouraged, because I'd like for people to hear me the first time. But then right now I'm thinking about just how odd it is to realize that no matter what, you will be heard if you keep asking or you keep saying the statement. Even if people say, you're soft-spoken, they heard something. I just think that's interesting, just to realize how that kind of works. Any language has a voice, however audible. If you're wearing a mask, it's much harder for you to really hear what someone's saying, because you don't know if their mouth just moved or if they were talking specifically to you. But I think on top of seeing our mouth move, we have this hearing of a substance of some form being placed into the atmosphere that we tend to question, what was that? I was watching Reservoir Dogs last night, and one of the colored dogs, I guess, members, Mr. Blonde, has such a raspy voice. He's such a calm and collected dude. He's also a bit of a psychopath, a bit of a gangster, a bit of all sorts of joy and bubbly. If you've seen Reservoir Dogs, more power to you. It's a great film by Quentin Tarantino, probably the most tamed film by Tarantino that I've ever actually listened to, I guess. But yeah, I just thought that was in relation to the film. Mr. Blonde says this one line that it's the form of that line, but you don't know exactly what he said unless you associate that form with something else. So he said, what is this guy talking about? And a certain that voice of what is this guy talking about? What are you talking about right now? What are you on about? He has that very low and that speed that is always associated with someone who's very assertive in what they're saying, but could care less if you're paying attention or anything like that. He enters this warehouse and he's standing and leaning to the side, and he says those words. I think there are a lot of instances where you get characters like that in film and in shows specifically ones that you can really like vocalize or hear what the character is saying. And I also think that it matters about the context. Like, I think that there's so much importance around the habitual ways that we talk to one another. Like, you know, if you see someone on the street, there are a few ways that you can say, there are a few things you can say, but those are only the few things that you'd expect someone to like say to you, which is, you know, hello, or they just wave, or they say how you're doing. And I think it always depends on whether you know the person or not. But for the most part, some of the most simplest phrases that we say to one another is pretty unified and easily recognizable. So context matters. Depending on your region or the state that you're in, or I don't know, even an island that you're on, it really matters about what is the default way that people talk. But then I think when you're getting into conversations, it just becomes more of like familiarity with the form of certain words. Like, like contextualize or something like that. I feel like there are a few options for what you could get out of that. You know, you could get out of like sexualize or generalize, familiarize, or I don't even know if that's a word, but there are a few words that you can like kind of weed out when confronted with a conversation. I am at a different location than I was like just a minute ago. I didn't want to reveal it, but here we are. I think it definitely adds to it though, like switching of locations and leaving the mind to wonder where exactly you're recording from, whether or not the audio is good. I think the most important thing about certain things is what someone's talking about rather than the quality. But I think our generation is, or the younger generation is more set on, you know, good content and making it seem, you know, top notch. But sometimes I like to flow with what I have surrounding me and what is right before me, and when I feel it's ready to talk about a topic, or where I feel it's ready to talk about a topic. I just thought outside along this sidewalk ish would be a good spot to kind of do the second half of what I was talking about. Yeah, kind of like to go back to like movies and shows. I know that for the most part we could always just catch these things in real life, but it's interesting to think about like what films and shows choose to take out of what they're doing and leave in, even if it seems like it's one of the most like blockbustery type of shows or movies. I think that your choice in script words is very specific, and it speaks to your character and where you've been in your life and what you've experienced. There's another character that kind of insinuates or channels that like vibe of you get the form, but it's almost terrifying for you to like kind of confront that that's what you're hearing. What's his name? It starts with the C. Chigurh. I think it's Chigurh. But he's from No Country for Old Men. Dang it. It's my favorite film, and I don't even know the name. No Country for Old Men. I think that's what it is. But yeah, I thought that like the way his character is portrayed in that film was really daunting in form. I mean, you get a lot from visuals of people, and I think that adds to what is said, and it makes it clear, you know, what someone might say depending on like how you see them in day-to-day life. Like if they look menacing, you know, they're not going to say anything like cutesy, but that's rare. Like I think that it's rare for that to like occur because I guess just stereotypes is stereotypes, and that's how it works. That's always how it works. But Chigurh, I'm just gonna go with Chigurh, even though I know it's not Chigurh. He has this like demeanor of assertiveness, and I think like the most popular scene in No Country for Old Men is the coin scene in the gas station. It's one of the most like terrifying things to just be placed in a situation like that. I would highly advise you to also watch No Country for Old Men. If you want like a little snippet of what it's about, watch that clip. Just look up No Country for Old Men coin scene and it'll pop up. But it's terrifying. It's terrifying to be put in a situation where someone is in such control and such calm. The only context I'll give you is that it's about like a serial killer, or I guess a psychopath, and kind of the people that he interacts with, sort of. Interacts with and not interacts with, because it's strange that like some of the characters don't meet each other throughout the film, or don't at all. But yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I think like things like that where you get the context and the demeanor, and it's clear that if you sum it up, the only thing coming out of a person's mouth would be those set ideas that your brain or your understanding would say, or like would believe. Yeah. And then it gets into like people choosing to listen or not. Like it's almost like, well, it is technically just like the context of introverts and extroverts, and how introverted people would have a much easier time just simply listening to what someone's saying right before responding. It's not always like, you know, a big deal or a big thing that introverts do. And I consider myself an introvert, and I feel like sometimes I don't like pause to just hear what someone's saying. But at the same time, I feel like I've reached a point where it's like I've kind of just listened in a way that I've grasped what someone's saying. And if I don't understand, you know, I just like ask again. But there is something important about being able to pause and really think about what someone's saying without the need of saying, can you say that again? Or what did you say? I know from my mom, whenever I'm like talking to her about certain things, or I call out to her and ask her a question, she always goes, What did you say?" And then like 5 seconds later, she'll just be like, and then answer the question. Or like, she doesn't say but she answers the question. Yeah, it's like our mind sometimes takes a while to process what someone's saying, and I think we don't take advantage of that enough, because we're in a society where it's important to respond immediately to others. It's almost textbook to respond to others immediately. It's damaging to the words that we say to each other. It's really damaging, because I think I'm not one with statistics, but 99% of the time, a lot of the shit that breaks friendships is miscommunication and misunderstanding. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on just like how verbal words can be a form that is strange, that will immediately come across or will immediately be understood, whether it's repeating it again or saying it a little louder. But it's always just in that same form, and there could be a debate for people who just don't hear well. Like, you can't blame people who don't hear well, because it's just like, you got to speak up for that, but there's still a form there, especially if they're looking at you, like, reading lips, and also just people who don't hear at all, like people who are deaf. And we find ways to like work around that. So we have sign language, we have reading people's lips, and it's just interesting that it will come across, so long as you want it to come across, whatever you need to say or whatever you want to say. So I think that's really interesting to see, just how that works. Because nowadays, I think I kind of just say what I want to say in whatever tone I think is right for the situation. And if it's not heard, I'll just say it again, unless I don't feel up to that. But at the same time, I think that whatever I said, as long as I've said it like the tone and the energy and the confidence that it needs to be said in, or wherever or how I want it to be said in, then it's up to the other person to just, kind of listen in for that. And if they don't, then we got problems, don't we? We got problems. Yeah. I'm staring at a broken up bed. I don't know how it got that way. I don't know if they literally like dismantled it themselves, but it is goofy looking, and it's kind of how I'm feeling, my life is feeling, just on the side next to the dumpster, just completely broken up and left to their own devices in the middle of the night. But it's what I'm staring at currently, and people just passing by and cars passing by. You heard those. I am not cutting that out. I might cut out ones that interrupt what I'm saying or something like that, but
I still don't want to cut it out. I think I won't. You'll just get the rawness of that. But yeah, thank you so much again for listening to State of Mind. I hope it is interesting. I hope what I talked about is interesting. Everything is interesting. It's just a matter of like how you say it. That's what I'm finding out. Like, I've heard people talk about taxes in interesting ways, and science in interesting ways. There's a whole show about lawyers that's very interesting. Better Call Saul. Anyways, I guess considering the time that it is for me, good night. Or good morning, or good not morning, good not night. Whatever is going on in your life. And yeah, see ya.